So welcome to the second session on maths, critical thinking and Christian faith in God. We're going to start off by looking at critical thinking methods and how they apply in mathematics, and then we'll look at faith in God and connections to mathematics. So one of the first tasks to be done in mathematics is to take longer and more care to think about the questions that we're dealing with. And then we might think about different ways of looking at the question, different ways of engaging with the question. I think in a classroom, we often don't think enough about ways we can engage with the questions, nor do we think about practical examples. And as one of the students was saying before, if we get outside the classroom more, if we get some paint and drawing out more, if we could do lots of other activities, even music, the notes on a guitar or in any musical instrument are often able to be described mathematically. And there's so many other activities that we can do. So once you've identified a task, a question, a problem, or a situation to explore using mathematical thinking, then we often break the challenge down into a number of steps, which can be done together or separately. One of the steps in maths is to break the task down to components. So if we're looking at area, we might think of what are the aspects of the area. We've got length, we've got breadth, we've got volume. You might also want to think about resources. Often we spoon feed the students the ways things will be done, but we could discuss with the students, how do you think we might find some information? And these days you've got YouTubes. How many people use YouTubes to do anything these days? You know, if your laptop breaks down, you go to YouTube. I mean, you can pull your laptop apart and rebuild it using YouTube. Maybe you could do that with your car or your house, I don't know. But it's amazing the different ways we can learn these days. And we can apply similar approaches in maths. We could say, look, we've got a problem. We want to calculate the height of something and what are the resources that we can get. Then you want to identify a number of tasks that we can use along the way. So you might measure the length and the breadth. We then want to identify the knowledge and skills needed. We want to think about the assumptions that were made. And we talked before about COVID. And with COVID, the assumptions include things like geography, age. So if you're a different age, it means different things to you. Then we want to select their strategies. How do you gather the information? How do you work it out? Look at the patterns and the connections involved. So there's a lot on the internet about different ways of tackling mathematics. This is from Eric Mann from Purdue University, Essence of Maths, in which he talks about the formulating of the problem. That is, too often in maths, we don't think enough about problems that relate to the task we're doing. Before we talked about the area of a circle, and we could start by talking about landscaping. And I worked as a landscape designer for a while for a couple of companies. And so you'd carry around your bit of book and your calculator, and you'd try and do everything 10 centimeters deep. So if you had a cubic meter of gravel, you'd know that that would cover 10 square meters, and then you get a cubic meter of soil. If you made that 10 centimeters deep, then that would cover 10 square meters. And so you did all these calculations, then you draw it up on paper and you draw pretty pictures of trees on it as well. And all around us, there are examples of maths problems, whether it be landscaping, home improvement, building, dressmaking and fashion, and then financial management and budget and income and expenditure. My daughter said to me the other day, how can you buy a house if they cost $1 million? And it struck me that if you pay 6% interest on, 3% interest the bank had on $1 million, and 3% on $1 million equals $30,000. Now, if you had a house that had two parts to it and you could rent out half of it for $600 a week, or even if you started with an investment house rather than the house you lived in and you lived with your parents or whatever, if $600 a week is being paid in rent, that actually covers the interest on the house. And then if the house is going up inflation by, say, 3% per year, then the value of that house is actually going up by $30,000 a year. And after 3 years, it could have gone up $90,000. And so after 6 years, you could actually own $180,000 in value on the house. So maths can be used all around us to work with budgets and incomes and expenditure, all of those areas. One of the steps you need to think about in maths is what are the symbols? So we've got length times breadth. How do you transfer the symbols into language? And so in budgeting, you need to know the meaning of these different terms that are being used. Occasionally, I think of buying some stocks and shares. Trouble is, there's all these terms, aren't there? Dividends and all of these things. So you have to look up that. Anyone here know anything about stocks and shares? Poor students. So Alex, tell us something about stocks and shares.
Well, I'm not particularly investing in like a certain stock or share, but more investing in the market itself.
Yeah.
And so when you invest money, you're looking to gain more money as the market rises or as the value rises. Is that?
Absolutely. And I think the theory is the stock and share market has always risen.
Yeah.
And often it rises somewhere between 7 and 11%. I mean, the danger is if you went and borrowed money at 3% and added it onto your parents' house loan or something, and then put it into the share market, in theory, it would go up more than the borrowing. Of course, if you're in those 2 or 3 bad years where it goes down, then it would be very, very worrying and it wouldn't be so good. But the theory is correct. Stocks and shares almost always go up by 7 or 11%, where due to companies like Coles and Woolies, they expand, they build more shops, so it should go up by 7 to 11%. However, if you buy that company that goes broke and you lose all your money, then the theory doesn't work. But so we use these, buy a car, all of those things. We use this information all the time. Traveling overseas, I'm looking at these calculations of catching COVID, and then your chances of catching it increase after 3 months because your immunity drops. And so you've got to calculate all of these different aspects. Then there's hidden and implicit information. How do you work out what the different information is that you need to understand? There's inconsistencies and contradictions in the problem. And we're facing this even talking about God and maths. We see that there's evidence all around us that God has given us the world that we live in. You might want to formulate the problem, think it through, how we work through the problem. So there's a lot written in these areas. We've said before, recognize the importance of imagination in maths. So it's not just about getting the correct answer, being like a robot. There are opportunities to think, how does it work? And maths is used in art and art galleries. Maths is used all around the world in creating new activities and every area that we're involved in. Well-taught maths helps students develop and use a range of skills in analytical thinking. Maths also has a certainty about it, so we can judge the veracity and reliability of statements in maths. And if we had a bit more time, we could talk about the maths of buying a car. Any thoughts, Alex? Should we buy a new car, which will rapidly go down in value as we drive it out? Should we buy a very old car, which will cost us money every 6 months because we've got to do repairs on it? Or what are your thoughts on new and used cars and the ideal number of years old a car should be, Alex?
I don't know too much about it. I haven't actually bought a car for myself yet, but I'm guessing that you'd want a car not that's sort of in between. That I mean, it's always going to go down in value, but you don't want to have to spend too much on repairs or just buying a completely new car.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's about 3 to 7 years old, and then that could be the way to go, or even 1 to 4 years of old. Karen, your thoughts on the age of a car, and then Belinda maybe?
I'm pretty sure depreciation stops. It was either after it stops taking its massive hits after about 3 or 5 years.
Yes.
Where the car's safety features and any other features that you want are still pretty new, and it's still a very nice car, but you're not losing out too much on your interest. Say if you bought a car for like $40,000, by the time you drive it out of the dealership, it's now worth $36,000.
Yeah, so good. Belinda, your thoughts?
I think it depends on your lifestyle, for one. But I think don't know. There's a lot of things to look at with it. Like you've got to like what kind of car, for instance, and then. But I think that if you've got one under warranty, I think it's always a gamble because you can buy brand new cars at a lemon. So it's a decision that's probably very personal to those because it just depends on your budget. Yeah, a whole lot of things. What kind of car you're looking at.
And Karen was talking before about driving a couple of hours, and when you got to drive a lot of distance. There, Martha, your thoughts on buying a car?
Look, I grew up in a family. My dad was a pastor, so his income wasn't a lot. So we always had really old cars. So I'm more, and they were not reliable and they broke down. So I'm more inclined to go with, no more than about 5 years old. Is my personal, but that's just because I have issues with cars and I don't want them to break down.
So there's lots of decisions can be made when buying a car, and there's another complexity. Everyone's going electric now, so that's going to raise questions, and then the price of electric cars will drop. Registration costs, insurance costs, there's all sorts of budgetary decisions when buying a car. Another interesting use of mathematics is when dating. And so in that famous manual by an unmarried woman of 7 and 20 can never hope to feel inspired or to inspire affection again. So you need to get married before you're 30. So the mathematics of dating says that you shouldn't marry the first person you meet, but you shouldn't leave it too long. And the ideal time is when you reject the first 37% of people and then marry the next best person after the 37%. The weakness of this is that if your perfect match was in the first 37%, you've missed it. But and then if it's the last person you meet out of the people you meet, then you miss it as well. But statistical studies have shown that there is a system to apply there. So even mathematicians struggle with maths. The point is maths can sometimes be hard, just like sport can be hard, just like music can be hard. So to do well with maths, then you need to recognise that there are a range of challenges that you may face. Another aspect of maths is maths and seeing God in the universe, and we're talking about that in the first session as well. Many people see a sense of order in maths and a sense of order in the universe, and they see a connection between the two, just like we said that you see a sense of order in Romeo and Juliet, and you see a sense of order in the books that are printed. They connect, that is Shakespeare's writing and the book that produced. Now, not everyone believes that Shakespeare wrote these books, so you could be a Shakespearean atheist who doesn't believe in it, but there is evidence. And the same too with Order in the Universe. And so if you find a watch, there's evidence that someone made it. If you see a house, there's evidence there was an architect. Pythagoras around 400 to 500 BC used the word cosmos, from which we get the word cosmetic. It refers to the presence of order and beauty in the world. And Plato in Timaeus describes the ways in which order in the universe is also beauty. And so when you see a right-angled triangle, there's something beautiful about it. And when you see a perfect square or a perfect circle, there's something beautiful about it. I think when you walk up to a nice house where they've got beautifully sculpted trees out the front that have got a round shape to them or a triangle shape to them, and you see it laid out, you begin to appreciate the beauty of maths. And you see a nicely shaped swimming pool or a nicely shaped garden, a nicely shaped car, all reflects the beauty and order that's in mathematics. And the same could be said of all the systems of the body. When you look at the construction that's in the nature of the human body, with a skeletal system, a muscle system, circulatory system, digestive, urinary, nervous, reproductive, lymphatic, endocrine, and respiratory system, you could say this all happened by chance. And you could say that if you give a huge amount of time, it could all happen. Or you can say there seems to be more going on. And mathematics helps describe some aspects of them all. Even if you look at one cell, you can see that there are lots of components in the cells that follow these patterns. Or if you step out to a huge distance, like the cosmos, there's gravity, things moving around. There all seems to be a sense of order. There's even a uniqueness in the Earth and the way in which it's made up of stardust, coupled with the history of the sun and the atmosphere. It's like a Goldilocks range. Everything seems to be just right. Even the 113 or so elements of the periodic table appear to be working just right. And the carbon atoms, which give us life, no other element there, apart from possibly silicon, could give us that same sort of life. So finding order in the universe is explained by philosophers as reflecting the order that God brings to the universe, and many great scientists and mathematicians like Kepler, Copernicus, Newton, all felt this order pointed towards God being involved. Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein also felt that there was a sense of order in the universe. And as I said in a previous lesson, the Big Bang Theory was a term given to the ideas of a Catholic astronomer about the origins of the universe. So some write, the more the universe seems comprehensible, the more it seems pointless. And Dawkins said the universe is what we'd expect to happen if there was no design. However, many people look and see the world as ugly, and then others see the world as beautiful. So hands up everyone who can see the uglier lady. So that's her mouth, and that's her eye, and that's her nose. And then hands up those who can see the beautiful lady. And so that becomes the necklace, that becomes her ear, that's her eye, and that's her nose there. And in some ways, seeing God and order in the universe is an act of faith in which you need to step out and to recognize that it points to what we see as there, but there are other people who may not quite see it. And then here you see a face, and then is the face there, or is it not there? So scientific paradigms, Thomas Kuhn said that paradigms are universally recognized. They provide models for communities of researchers. So it's worldview, it's the way in which we look at the world. Psychologist Viktor Frankl identified the pursuit of meaning as a human urge that challenges us to make sense of the universe in which we live. And the anthropic nature of meaning and purpose is the way we see it, but we would say that it fits with God's design for us. And then Paul Davies said the human capacity to reason and discover what the world is about tells us something about human people and relationship and love and a higher order reality like mathematics that is there in the universe. So on to some other slides. Now, one of the names that we often see associated with this sense of beauty is the name Fibonacci. Before we get to Fibonacci, as we mentioned earlier, maths connects our ideas of the unseen realm with the created realm. And Plato said that this is because the forms such as maths are related to the material that we see. And Fibonacci, Leonardo Fibonacci wrote a lot on patterns that are in nature. Fibonacci basically said, if you, a lot of examples in the natural world grow by adding more and more as they grow, like a spiral. If you start off with 1 and then add 1 to it, 1 and 1 makes 2. But if you then add 1 and 2, you end up with 3. If you now add 3 and 2 and end up with 5, and then add 5 and 3, the next square you have will be 8. And if you keep going, then you'll just have a spiral that gets bigger and bigger. And this is partly the way many natural parts of the world seem to unfold. So all around us, there are examples of Fibonacci spirals, whether you see it in a galaxy, whether you see it in a shell, whether you see it in a flower, all around us are Fibonacci circles. Alex, have you come across Fibonacci and spirals? And then Karen, have you come across it? Alex?
Yeah, we definitely learned it in school. Yeah, the sequence.
Any thoughts? Do you think that points to the God who designs the world contributing to this system of Fibonacci spirals?
Yeah, I definitely agree with how you were saying that we see it all around us, and I think that's a good example.
Yeah, it's like fingerprints of God, perhaps. Kieran, your thoughts, and then Belinda.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting reoccurrence that happens throughout nature. It definitely points to some sort of planning.
Yeah, there seems to be something in the design which is it's a bit like having a motor car that builds itself being almost more remarkable than a motor car in which each part is built. Belinda, and then Martha. What are your thoughts?
I think it, sorry, I think I'm dropping out a bit. I think it's, there's definitely beauty in it. And I think it just comes down to the actual, even though we can see flowers and things like that, I think it's just our way of putting that into mathematical language and seeing that beauty. It's kind of like the unseen with Plato. It's like we're making the numbers out of the beauty, whereas sometimes we can just look at the beauty.
Sounds good. Martha, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I agree with everything. And I think you can see, to me, all of creation points to a creator. So I have no trouble seeing that spirals point to a creator.
Abby, and then Shelley Ann.
I agree with what Martha said too. I always try and look for the details. So this is just one of those things that's like, I like what you said, how it's kind of like God's fingerprint in it all.
Yeah. Shelley-Ann, and then Gabriella.
My husband spent a lot of time on this at architecture school, and he loves maths and he loves God, and he really enjoyed it.
Yeah, sounds good. Gabriella?
Yeah, I agree with what everyone's saying. I think, I mean, talks about in the Bible the fact that if we don't cry out, the rocks will cry out. So I just think this is the Shell's spiral, like it's worshipping. I don't know.
Yeah, so good. And certainly Fibonacci contributes to this understanding. As a brief review, Leonardo Fibonacci, one of the most outstanding mathematicians of European Middle Ages, known as Leonardo Pisano or Leonardo of Pisa. And he was born about 1170, so it's in the scholastic period. And his early education came from a Muslim schoolmaster, which again may have brought some of those Muslim ideas in. As well as that, he used Euclidean ideas. So he was one of the first to introduce the Hindu-Arabic number system to Europe, and also his influence continues through to today. Certainly the Fibonacci numbers, where you just add one to the previous one, helps explain the spiral. And then his initial work was done with the breeding of rabbits. And again, as the rabbit numbers increase, they can get bigger and bigger. His numbers also contribute to the golden ratio, in which one side is related to 1.61803 on the other side. And the golden rectangle is said to be the most pleasing state in architectural design. And you see a lot of it in ancient Greek temples and thinking. And that you see it a lot in archaeology and architecture today. Fibonacci numbers can be seen in the way in which as flowers grow, they keep adding similar numbers to what they had previously, and so they develop these beautiful spirals. Pineapples do the same, cauliflowers do the same, pine cones do the same. So you see the Fibonacci numbers, whether they be a one-petaled lily, two-petaled orchid, a three-petaled trillium, five-petaled columbine, 8 petals, and so on. So the Fibonacci numbers are quite frequent out there. You see a lot of other geometry in nature, which also point to these mathematical design concepts that are there in nature. And symmetry too can be seen to point to these mathematical concepts. So there are many mathematical properties out there in the natural world, and they point further to a sense of design by God behind all of these things. So we see that there appear to be laws out there which are abstract entities, and we've said that just like Shakespeare's ideas in his mind, there appear to be real mathematical concepts that are out there in the real world in which God lives, and that we often call these unseen and abstract. And then there are the concrete facts, but really we can only see them in the present time. And then our mind is able to bring these together, and we can join together the concrete and the abstract. And this points to something very remarkable in our mind in its capacity to bring these three realms together. So whenever you do maths, you're touching on eternal concepts that are incredibly valuable, like 2 + 2 = 4. You can't touch the 2 or the 2. You can see it outworked in the examples, 2 apples + 2 apples, but it's the concept behind it that is fascinating. You can't make 2 + 2 different to 4 unless if you take 2 liters of water and 2 liters of water, you end up with 4 liters of water. I think if you take 2 liters of water and 2 liters of kerosene or something like that, you actually end up with about 3.9 liters, not 4 liters. And that's because some of the molecules sit inside each other and they take up less space. So there are complexities. The law's not broken. It's just that there are different ways things work. And Albert Einstein, with his theory of relativity, challenged the ideas of Isaac Newton and said space can be bent and size can change as you reach very high speeds. And Einstein's been shown to be right about that. But Einstein still holds to a sense of belief in God. So mathematics, if we're going to teach people about maths, we need to teach them to love maths. And so I think one of the real challenges we face is helping students to love maths. Can I get everyone to think a little bit now and write down what's a way that you could help students love maths? So how can we help students love maths more? One example, one thing I'm thinking of, or maybe I'll save it. Gabriella, any thoughts on what you could do? And then Belinda after that, maybe?
I think, like I've said before, connecting it to something individual students are interested in. So I don't know, if you've got a kid that loves sport and they love running, connecting it to something like that. Or if you've got another kid that loves baking, showing them how maths connects in that. So I just think connecting it and making it real for each student.
Yeah, and if you could even use the home ec area and prepare and maybe get different students to try different combinations and to weigh them out on weighing machines, and the same with the sport running. If you get some stopwatches from the science department and try different approaches there, that would be so useful. Belinda?
I definitely agree with Gabrielle. I think you need to have those relationships with your students. You need to understand their interests to engage them. But I think also you have to be excited. If you're not excited, they know. If you're, if you're scared of it, they're going to be scared of it. They'll pick up on that.
Yeah, which is really hard because we're all scared of maths. but I guess you got to admit that there are some times when you wrestle over your budget and you wrestle over the litres in your tank of petrol and all of that. I mean, and tax returns. We all face challenges in maths, but we all get excited when you can work out, like a jigsaw puzzle, you can work things out. Kieran, your thoughts over how we can get students more interested in maths?
Yeah, it's like Gabriella was saying, and just got to really tailor it to each student, which can be very difficult with a massive class, and it's much more difficult to do like the one-on-one interest. But if you can find the general interest of the class and just like maybe figure out, okay, so a lot of the class are into, say, this specific thing, and then the other part of the class has an interest in this thing. In my lessons, I'm going to start to use that and start to just think, okay, so say if this thing was I don't know, people are interested in space, we'll look at we'll start looking at how we apply math to, say, aerospace science, and the way that simple math and geometry has been used to put man on the moon and all that stuff.
Yeah, love it. So good. Now, we have to admit at times we struggle with maths as well. And so I think it's important to be honest with the students and recognise that there are times where we don't know the formulas, and you've got to look them up again. I think every one of us today have admitted, doing the circumference of a circle, an area of a circle, we've probably forgotten that. But there are ways you can look things up and you can familiarise yourself with things. And I think that's part of the learning process. So we need to understand that just as music and sport can be hard, mathematics can be hard, and that we need to come up with resources to get over the challenges that we face. Some have said doing maths can be part of the fallen human nature. That is, we'd prefer the easy way out. We'd prefer to know where the answers are in the back of the book to copy them through. And we've got to admit the fallen human nature but as well as that, the way we can do even better than that. Shelley Ann, your thoughts on how we can make maths more interesting and more real?
Well, I guess today I have spent one period with my student that I work with Down syndrome, and she's in grade 10. And like we were talking about before, I actually don't think that she needs to know Pythag theory. And I just think it shouldn't be kids always sitting at desks and having worksheets, and it can be noisy and it can be active.
Yeah, so good. So we can make it real and come alive for them. The other thing that we can do is for students who are Christians, we can show that there is a God aspect to mathematics. Eugene Wigner, winner of the 1963 Nobel Prize for Physics, said, "The unreasonable effectiveness of maths in science points the way to not just coincidence, but something much bigger is going on, such as God at work in maths and the same God at work in your life and mine." So just as there's a design that makes maths work, there can also be a design in your life and mine in which the problems in our life can be resolved through that which God has done for us, through Jesus, through his plan. Wigner said, "The enormous usefulness in maths in science is in some ways mysterious, but it shows that there's much more going on." Kepler said, "The laws of nature are but the mathematical thoughts of God." And it was exciting for Kepler to explore those and find answers to those. Colossians says, "Jesus is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation, and all things are created by him." So as we've said in these two classes, maths is all around us. It's in the natural world. It's there even when we're not writing down these math symbols, it's still there. We've got examples like the Fibonacci spiral and the golden ratio. We've got examples in geometry. We've said that maths is not always easy. At times it can be hard and a challenge, but we have a capacity in maths to touch on the very language and the thoughts of God, and we can benefit from this, and we can also share in God's thinking and his words. At the beginning of today's lesson, we read Psalm 94. Take notice, those who are not wise, God who fashioned the ear, he can hear us. God who formed the eyes, he can see. And so God is not just the maths, he's a personal God who's interested in us. So God's providential rule over the world is shown in some ways in maths. You don't change maths, it's regular, it's there, just like God is regular and he is there. There's a similarity between maths and God that can point to God, and it can be because maths can be seen as a language of God. I guess God speaks a number of languages, including maths and also our language, the heart language, the spirit language. Psalm 121:2, we are encouraged to trust in God. And the language of trust is in other Psalms. The Lord is on my side, I will not fear. What can other people do to me? God is our refuge and our strength. We don't fear. The Bible indicates that we can trust in God because he watches over every area of life. And like the maths that doesn't change, that's reliable and stable, God is reliable and stable, and he has good purposes for our lives. Can I get everyone to write down now 2 or 3 things that you have learnt and one question that you may have? So 2 or 3 things learnt and one question that you may have. Maybe we can ask Karen first. What are 2 or 3 things that have stood out to you that you've learnt?
I suppose, yeah, just looking at the way that even non-believing mathematicians and scientists have all discovered that there's something greater than just coincidence when looking at the coordination and the consistency of mathematics in the universe.
So good. And do you have a question you'd ask?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Yeah. Martha, your thoughts? What stood out?
So for me, I just really found the Fibonacci spirals interesting. I'd actually never heard of that before. And thought that was cool. And just, I'm kind of just blown away that God is so much in maths. Like I hadn't really thought like that before. But for a question, I don't really have a question.
Yeah, so good. Belinda.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the idea of the internal, there's eternal concepts. It's regular, it's consistent, it's reliable, and how that relates to Christianity as well. They all have the same type, they're eternal, it's regular, it's consistent, it's reliable.
Yeah, there's such a strong parallel there, isn't it? It's quite amazing. Shelley Ann.
Yeah, I guess just reminding and thinking about God's design can be taught through math. And then I was thinking about the the way that we measure elevation when we're going for a bushwalk, and we measure how much time it'll take to climb the elevation, and the way that we use measurement all the time, but we also don't understand time. And so I just kept thinking, and then how would you explicitly sometimes look at this for a week or for a unit if you interrelated it into a unit on number, maybe if you're doing number.
And isn't it interesting to admit, Shelley Ann, how little we know about time in some ways? That as a week goes by, a month goes by. I mean, we can measure it. And then again, what is time? And I think we have to admit that to some students too, don't we? Yeah. Any further thoughts?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I was looking at a Huon pine that was chopped down when, like in the 70s, and it had been around since before Jesus was born. And they'd done a timeline on the rings, and that's maths, but that's also creation and an order and the infinity of God, and that.
Yeah, that's so good. Abby, your thoughts? What stood out?
Well, sort of what everyone's been saying. I liked learning about the correlation between maths and God. And I thought of a question, but it's a question I'd ask myself.
Yes.
How can I be looking for mathematics throughout my day, and how, I guess, can I improve my mathematics skills? Yes. It's been a while, but yeah, that's a question I came up with of how can I, because I don't really choose to see maths throughout my day or even look for maths. So I think having eyes to see it will be kind of different and fun.
And also praise and worship. You can praise God in the regularity and all that's there. Gabriella.
Yeah, I think my things that I learned is similar as what everyone else is saying, but just that reminder that maths is so connected to everything and everyone, and that we need to be conscious of that. And I think, as Abby was saying, that just being able to have eyes to see that in our day-to-day is important.
Yeah, sounds good. And do we have one more?
That would be me.
Alex, thank you.
Yes. One of my favorite things that you said, I wrote it down, is that the real is the unseen, whereas the seen is a shadow on the wall. And I guess that was really good. And then one of the other things that I thought you brought to light was that not everyone's going to accept God, and that sometimes seeing God in the universe is an act of faith. And
Yeah.
thought that was good as well.
Yeah. And yeah, so important to be open to that revelation of God through faith. Shall we pray as we draw together what we've learned and interacted with today? Then if you have any questions at all, happy to answer that. Otherwise, we'll conclude. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the revelation of yourself in so many areas around us, when we see beauty in the sky, in the flowers, in the sea, in life that's all around us, and in our own lives, and the sense of purpose that you have for us. Lord, we pray that you'll equip us to communicate your truths to others, and that you'll help us to grow closer and closer to the author of all life and all order and purpose in this universe. Amen. So if there's no questions at all, I'll see you next week as we move on more to science and what we can understand from science in terms of critical thinking, and also in terms of our understanding of God and his way and work in our world as well. So thank you, each one.
Thank you.
Thank you.